Welcome to TBL Scope. I'm Kyle Koster. I'm here with Brian Giuffra. The man has a smile on his face because it is the day after the Masters. But this year, unlike other years, there was not live golf. But he's still happy. I know he had a great day yesterday. I could tell. I was watching his feed. In Slack, he's had a little extra pep in his step. And I think that's a direct correlation to what CBS chose to do this weekend. And that's re-airing classic rounds of yesteryear. On Saturday, we got Phil Mickelson talking about the jump heard around the world. On Sunday, yesterday, Tiger Woods reliving last year, which feels like 10 years ago at this point, his monumental comeback on Saturday to win the green jacket. Brian, talk to me about your experience watching this and what type of emotions it brought you and why it was so good in your mind.
I'll start with the emotions. I was completely engrossed yesterday. Tiger Woods is my favorite golfer, so yes, that was a little bit more special reliving that Masters from last year. I didn't cry this year as I did cry last year when Tiger won, but I just thought it was special the way that CBS actually presented it. I felt like the Nance Tiger dynamic, the Nance Phil Mickelson dynamic, you actually learned a lot more about these players than you do during a regular interview. For instance, Tiger revealed yesterday that he has 20 hole-in-ones and that he hadn't had one since 2000. So during his best stretch of golf and arguably the greatest stretch of golf in the history of golf, he didn't have one hole-in-one. And then he finally had one this past year with his son watching. So, I think that those like little insider tips, also Tiger talking about the way that Augusta National sets up the hard holes to be hard and to penalize you and the easy holes to give you those opportunities to succeed. It was just really interesting because then you actually watch those easier holes come into play 13, 15, 14, 15, 16. And you look at what Tiger did and what Dustin Johnson did and what all those guys, Brooks Koepka did to make those runs on Sunday last year. They were set up, and Tiger gave you that kind of foreshadowing when they were talking about the 12th hole when Francesco Molinari hit it into the water. And also, I thought that was cool. Tiger calls Francesco Molinari Fran out of nowhere, and nobody else calls him Fran, by the way. If you go, people call him Frankie. So I thought that was like a really interesting insider thing. You also got to see the inside of Phil Mickelson's trophy room, which was just the most insane trophy room that I could ever imagine. Pure mahogany and those beautiful glass display cases. It was just unbelievable. And then Tiger Woods' golf studio. I mean, I just wanted to be inside his golf studio with him, watching him talk about golf, watching him test out all those different clubs that you saw on the back angle there. It did look like a little bit like a safe room, so that was a little disconcerting. But I just thought it was so smart the way that CBS did it. And it actually surprised me that other outlets haven't tried to do the same thing. ESPN aired when the Heat had that amazing comeback against the Spurs. They aired Game 6 and Game 7. And I'm not saying you get LeBron James, but get Ray Allen. I can't imagine Ray Allen would be no, I don't want to do this. But get somebody from those games. Chris Bosh. I mean, Chris Bosh seemingly wants to be in the limelight. Get him to talk about what was going on in the huddle. Get him to talk about what was going on in their head when they're down 8 and the fans are leaving, with a minute to go. I just thought that was so cool. But yes, for me, of course, the Masters, it was very special. It was not quite as special as when Tiger won last year, but we were talking about this before. Even I forgot about some of the charges that were made by these players and all the people who had a share of the lead. It really was amazing. You had Ricky, I mentioned DJ, you have Jason Day, DJ Dustin Johnson, Bubba making a run, and then of course you have Koepka, Xander Schauffele, and Tiger Woods at the top of that, just insane. It was such a great day. I'm actually getting goosebumps right now, reliving it again for the third time in a calendar year. So just a really special broadcast. And I thought that CBS opened it up for other people to do a similar style.
See, here's the thing. I don't think that CBS, I don't think what they did was particularly impressive. I think it was a really good idea. I think it's an idea that's been existing and has been floating out there for a while. But the reason why it worked is because they got the two biggest stars, right? I think it doesn't matter how compelling and how high profile and what the production value is. Because I think we would admit the production value was basically this. There were times where the stream like felt a little bit like sluggish. It just felt like two guys sitting around chopping it up, like if we were watching an event right now and reacting in real time. So there wasn't anything special that they did. It works because it's Phil and Jim Nantz. It works because it's Tiger and it's Jim Nantz. I agree, it was fantastic. The golf, those rounds speak for themselves with how good they were. I thought what was the most interesting thing, though, as someone who is a big baseball guy, I kind of started to see golfers through the lens of baseball players. And what I mean by that is a pitcher can remember what they threw in a 2-1 count 6 years ago in a particular bat. A batter can remember 10 years ago what they did on 0-2 or the sequence of whatever. Golfers are the same way. Think of how many holes they play. Think of just the competition, then think of practice. But they can remember with like granular detail what they did, what it looked like, and they have to because it's part of their craft, much like baseball, thinking about what the opposition is going to give to you. It makes sense. And I don't think that those guys went back and cribbed notes about what was going on there. That was all off the top of their head. So it was really cool to see these guys as like machines and thinking through all their strategy. Also really cool to talk about the game within the game, where they're talking about like if Molinari was going to bogey, how important it was for Tiger to par. So breaking those games, breaking the round down, this huge 288-hole tournament, broken down shot by shot. Each thing is a competition, whether that's I want to get the ball inside 15 feet or 12 or whatever. And we all know that the point of golf is to get the ball in the hole in the fewest strokes possible. But they talk about things as like such big picture goals broken down in like these relatable things that you might not understand the same thing when you're watching on TV, even when the analysts are talking about what they're doing, because the analysts are making their best, they're deducing what they think is they're using the best information they have, the best guess what this golfer is trying to do, but only through like a retrospective like this do we truly understand what they're trying to do. You brought up why other networks aren't doing stuff like this. And I agree that this was cool, but I think that the problem is there's such diminishing returns with the idea. Like you said, if they go through, they already did. ESPN, ABC has been replaying those classic NBA Finals games, right? So we've already seen them live once without the commentary. Are they going to go back and do commentary with the primaries? I don't think that's a great idea. And I do think it makes a huge difference whether it's Ray Allen or Manu Ginobili compared to LeBron James. I think star power, it has such wattage, and what it has in the biggest draw these things have going for them right now, which won't be the same in the future, will be the novelty factor. So how do you hear that argument from me? Do you agree, or can you push back?
No, listen, I don't agree with that. I do think you can't retroactively go back and now do March Madness, right? But we talked about a couple weeks ago about that Kansas-Memphis game. I mean, imagine having Derrick Rose and Mario Chalmers on that. That would have made it so much more compelling. And I watched it because I'm a sports nerd, but like they're not the biggest names. Obviously, Derrick Rose is, okay? But they're not the biggest names in the world, but it certainly would have compelled me to watch that more if I was a common fan looking for that little reason why I should watch it, right? I think that's the thing that CBS got right, was they added that little wrinkle. And yes, because it's Tiger, because it's Phil, that certainly adds to it. And maybe I'm a golf nerd, so whatever. But if Koepka had won that and it was Brooks Koepka, who's the most monotone, seemingly boring person when it comes to talking about golf, everything else about him seems really cool. But like when it comes to talking about golf, he's not a really engaged person. He doesn't seem to like it that much. But I would have watched him. I would have listened to it. So like, looking forward, with the NBA playoffs would have been starting like within this week, I believe. Like that would be amazing to hear somebody talking about, get Patrick Ewing on there to talk about the fight against the Miami Heat, right? With Alonzo Mourning and Van Gundy holding on to Alonzo Mourning's leg. I mean, like, again, like it's those moments that I think there are real opportunities for us to do it. I do agree with you in the sense that it has to be something that's like slightly adjacent to what we would be seeing at that time. That's what made this Sunday feel special to me, is that I actually had purchased a onesie for my son when I was at the Masters last year, and he was wearing his shirt and I was wearing mine, and it was just nice sitting there watching the Masters and feeling that in that moment that like this is what we would have done anyway. So I think having that element of timeliness is very important, but I don't think I don't think it gets worse because the player gets worse. I think that the ratings aren't going to be as big. Right. If you get LeBron James to do anything, of course, the ratings are going to be big. If LeBron James had done the horse tournament, I guarantee you the ratings would have been higher than what they wound up being. So, it goes without saying that star power adds to it, but I don't think that the lack of star power would take away from it. Or it wouldn't be as interesting, at least to people who are going to watch it and just needed that little extra thing. I wanted to just quickly go back to a point before I turn it back over to you. Phil Mickelson, one of the coolest things he said during his interview with Nance was that he had the putt on 12, which he birdied in 2004, which really kind of spurred on the back nine charge that he made on his way to catching Ernie Els and ultimately surpassing him and winning his first major. He said that he had that putt, a very similar one, in 2002 and 2003. And he explained how the shot had broken both ways. He had hit it through the break one time and he hit it too softly. And so he finally had all of that information, that 3 years, it took him 3 years of doing that putt in order to do it. And then the other point I wanted to make about you is, did you notice that Tiger Woods also knew what everybody else did in his group? He was talking about Tony Finau's shot that was like coming up on 15 when he was on 12. He was like, it was one of the best, whatever, 6 irons, I think it was, that I've ever seen. And like, that was the crazy thing to me, was not only that Tiger remembers his own shots, because I think as a golfer, you do remember your own shots, but I can't, remember anybody's shot of like a playing partner. I know it's different for these guys. It's the Masters, but I thought that was really cool listening to him talk about Molinari's shots and Finau's shots. But to your point, I think I would love to watch anybody as long as it was timely and as long as they were part of it, whether they were a massive name like a LeBron James or whether they were somebody who played a big role and obviously was a great player in their own right, like a Chris Bosh.
Yeah, really interesting here when you mention about, things need to have a peg. We're in a time, sports fans, we rely on such a rhythm. Everything has a routine. Like, this sporting event leads into sporting event. And then, now we're like ramping up, and then soon it's going to be Kentucky Derby Day. Soon it's going to be, time when the British Open would be played. We have such a calendar built into our rhythms of sports, and it's such a comforting thing too. It's not something anybody ever stops and pauses and thinks about, like, oh, I'm comforted by the regularity of the sports calendar. But it's very real because, it helps us mark the passing of time. We're used to it. Our body understands what's going to come next. Where our mind is supposed to be focused. There's this real comfort in the security blanket that we have. So you're absolutely right that I think that plays a big part of it. The problem is that we're in this unprecedented time where there is no normal, right? And our entire calendar, as well as our expectations for what we're going to see as sports fans, are going to change. And I think, we don't have to talk about the horse. I just wanted to mention it really quickly. Like, the horse last night did not go very well. It wasn't, people didn't seem to enjoy it. Twitter returned to its form where people got on and seemed to type into Twitter complaining about a show they could easily turn off, which, that was some nice normalcy too. But at least we're trying it, and people really need to recalibrate what their expectations are for entertainment. And I think that we're looking at something we saw yesterday and Saturday on CBS about, that's pretty much maybe as good as it can get. I want to end here with just like 2 free ideas. You don't have to pay me for these, but you replay these. 2 things you can do. You can bring back the pop-up video element. Remember pop-up video where they play? You can intersperse all these facts on the screen, as well as incorporating like memes and tweets and social media that were happening in real time that are able to replicate what it was like to be consuming this product on a 2-screen experience. I think that's something that you could really sell to people because it's just different enough. And that way you don't have to actually go out and get the talent. You don't have to do much, production interviews, stuff like that. That's something that can be done, in like post at an edit bay to put out a new product. And I just want to I think that it's so cool to see the swings that networks and people are taking in this time. This is a field where people have to be creative to get into it, and they're going to have to be creative to survive. So there's going to be some stinkers, there's going to be some home runs, but I think that there was something really comforting and awesome about being able to sit back. I mean, I know I did. I wasn't able to watch the full rounds, but well, my young son was napping on my chest. I got in front of the TV and I watched it, and it was a reasonable facsimile of oh, this is the time for my master's nap. And I really think that feels good in the soul. So I think that it was really great to see, and I hope that there's more stuff that reminds us of the little things in sports that bring us happiness.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you completely. And the one thing that I would say about that is I think the big issue is when I respect people trying things, right? Like the NBA 2K20 tournament, the horse tournament. I understand why they're trying things, but I think sometimes you're trying too hard. And that would be the one thing that I would say. You're right. We have to be creative. We have to continue to put content out. I actually love your idea. They do that on Bravo right now, where they're replaying old episodes and they put up little facts or little quotes from people. I think that would be a really cool way to re-air it and not have all that production, all the production that you were talking about. But I think keep trying, and hopefully we see a couple more home runs.
All right, that's TBL Scope. I'm Kyle Koster. That's Brian Giuffra. See ya.